Okay, well, today's story is we're doing a series of stories through the book of Acts with a group in Central Asia, and it's been a lot of fun. I've Yeah, thank you, Siri. Uh, when I said series, Siri kicked in. But Yeah, it's been really interesting because I'm digging into some portions that I haven't necessarily done as story before. And the story today is about a centurion. And a centurion, we know, was basically a lieutenant or a captain over 100 men in the Roman army. Now, just as a teaching moment, we're going to see that he was part of a particular group in the Roman army called the Italian Regiment. Now, my temptation as a pastor is to research the Italian Regiment because there's some really interesting things about the Italian Regiment online. And you guys can look that up for yourself later. But if, as the storyteller, I start introducing that stuff, and honestly, doing the advanced training last week, I recognized I have done that with a number of stories, just kind of falling into bad habits, right? Uh, but what happens is, as you let that become part of your introduction for a story, then when you go into an oral culture, that's typically going to follow you into your introduction, and you're going to introduce that information. And I'm already the big white guy from America who has a seminary education. And so pretty much everywhere I go, I'm going to be more educated than the majority of the people there. And even the people who are better educated than myself, they're going to think because I was educated in America that I was educated better than they were, which just goes to show how little they know about education in America. But because of that, I really have to fight to stay right in the story so I don't set myself up as being the benevolent professor. Uh, there was a guy who teaches before us, and he teaches very much in a literate lecture fashion. And he has some good information that he shares. But at the end of his lesson today, he was asking some questions, and he asked a question, and somebody gave the answer, and he said, "Yes, that is what I was looking for." That was his exact quote, and I'm biting my tongue literally, because if that comes across with the methodology we teach, then I've done it wrong. Not that what he was doing was wrong, but the way we teach, that would not be what I would be looking for. Uh, it's Sam. It's kind of like a level soccer field, a football field. If I've been in some places in Latin America, and their football fields are on the side of a mountain, and they're like this. I mean, you can, if you throw the ball out there, it's gonna roll down the mountain. But there's no flat ground, right? Uh, and so we have to work at keeping all of us at the same level, because what will happen is that person has a deep, deep, deep experience with the Lord, and who has trusted God in situations I can't even imagine. They're not going to say anything if they consider everybody else in the group to be smarter and better educated than them. And because of that, the group is going to miss out on some really deep spiritual truth. Uh, so here's our story from God's word. There was a man in Caesarea named Cornelius, and he was a centurion of what was called the Italian regiment. he was a devout man and he feared God along with his whole house. He gave alms generously to the people, and he was always praying. About 3 o'clock in the afternoon, an angel of God distinctly appeared to him and said, Cornelius. Well, Cornelius was really afraid. And he said, Oh, yeah, yes, my Lord. And the angel said to him, Your prayers and your alms have come up before God as a memorial. So send men to Joppa, and you're going to send for a guy named Simon, who's also called Peter, and he is staying at the house of Simon, who's a tanner. And the house is right there on the coast. So send some men, and Peter will come and tell you what you need to know. And there's our story from God's word. We'll just kind of stop right there. You know, and I'm curious, what do you think it might have been like to be a Roman soldier who had defeated your army has defeated the army of a country who says their God is superior to every other God, right? So what do you think it might have been like to be a Roman soldier and to be comparing your gods and this God who allowed his country to be defeated? What are you thinking about Jehovah God?
Maybe he's not very powerful.
Okay, yeah.
There'll be a wee bit of the master race mentality. We beat these guys, we're better than these guys. They're kind of we natives, they should know their place now and their God.
Yeah, and we were talking about this morning in a group discussion. I was kind of thinking I would struggle with really you're worshiping the loser God? Really? What's up with that? Right? Here's I'll get you guys to help me just real quick with this story, and we're not doing this exactly the way we normally would do it because I do want to keep it a little shorter for you guys since we've gone a little long. There was a man in Caesarea, and what was his name?
Cornelius.
Yeah, Cornelius. And what was his position in the military?
A centurion.
Yeah, he was a centurion in what was called the Italian regiment. And he was what kind of man?
A man who prayed, a praying man.
Yeah, he was a praying. He was a devout man, and he feared God along with
His household.
Yeah, his whole household, and he gave what to the people?
Alms.
Yeah, generously to the people. And Sam, what else did he do?
Take a look, Sam.
Take a look. The clothesline behind me. He fed. Sorry.
He prayed. He prayed always.
Yes.
He prayed always, which is an interesting term to put after prayer. And so, do you remember what time it was in the afternoon?
3.
Yeah, it was 3 o'clock in the afternoon that an angel of God distinctly appeared to him in a
dream or vision.
Yeah, in a vision, dream, same thing. And he said, Cornelius, and Cornelius was like, "Whoa, this is so cool! It's an angel."
No.
He fell on his face.
Well, he was afraid. Yeah, we're not told exactly how he responded, but we do know he was really afraid. And he said, "Yes, Lord. What is it?" And the angel said, your
Your
Prayers
prayers,
heard.
and your
alms,
your alms have come before God as a really interesting word, as a
memorial.
a memorial. And so send men to Joppa, and you're going to find who there?
A guy called Simon or Peter.
Yeah, a guy called Simon, who's also called Peter. And where was he staying?
With Simon the tanner, because that's
with
not
Simon the
confusing.
tanner. And where's that house at?
On the coast.
Yeah, it's right there on the coast. And what's Peter going to do?
He's
Peter,
going to come explain things to you.
Yeah,
he'll tell you what you need to know.
To tell you what you need to know. Yeah. And there's our story from God's word. So I probably should have mentioned in my introduction, every time a centurion is mentioned, it's got a positive twist to it, which is really weird. I love studying that out in scripture, just that when they're mentioned, they're typically a good thing. But it says he was devout and he feared God along with his whole household. So the fact that his household followed his religious practices, what might that tell us about Cornelius?
He wasn't just a leader of men in war. He was a spiritual leader of men and
okay.
women too. He was one of those kind of guys you would follow anywhere.
Well, I wonder, we talked a little bit at the beginning about what it would have been like to be a Roman soldier, and you're in a country whose God, you defeated that country, and their God is known to have protected them historically. Do you think his family might have been taking any social risk by embracing the religion of this loser country?
Absolutely, with their own people, with his colleagues. You could be paying a big price for that.
Well, I wonder if that might give us any insight into what the word devout might mean when it talks about Cornelius. What do you guys see there?
A lot of praying.
Okay, yeah, a lot of praying.
I think both of those two things are very distinctive. The praying and the giving have an impact.
Okay.
A lot of people see the giving, and people up close see the praying. And I think there's a respect for that sometimes, even when people are not entirely sure, where you're at.
Yeah.
And I think that there must have been something attractive about this Jewish God that one seems to be leading you in victory, but it must just not be measuring up in some other ways to open that door to being open to this God. And I think the religious leaders are the leaders. So if you want to get the pulse of the town, you're going to end up spending some time with these people.
Yeah.
And then you start to see it's just, maybe something different about their God.
Okay. All right. Sam, what were you going to?
People are always drawn to someone who has a genuine personal faith in God. There must have been religious leaders in this time, but it's interesting that Cornelius is the one they're talking about here. Yeah.
Yeah, and the fact he's an enemy soldier,
Yeah, yeah.
uh, and yet, what might that tell us about God? That God doesn't just automatically exclude him, but because of what he's doing. I mean, it would that seem to be kind of a disqualifier? This is the same army that killed Jesus, just a few years before.
It to the religious people, it must really grate on them.
Oh,
You know, this guy seems to have a better faith than me. If they had actual eyes to see, and if they had a genuine faith in God too, it would kind of mess with your head more than a little bit.
yeah, yeah.
I think it's a comfort too, though.
In what way?
I think occupiers are scary.
Yeah.
And I think you can see it as the grace of God. If God works in the hearts of even a few of these people that are your occupiers, that there's some people that you can walk by, you can walk past them at night and they're not going to harass you. Your daughters are safe around them. That these people maybe are giving gifts to the temple, or because we hear some other stories where people seem to, these centurions have gotten a good relationship, and that's got to be like occupation is no picnic, but it could be so much worse.
Yeah. Well, you make me think, Diane. So for the Jews, for the spiritual Jews, right? How might this have grown their faith to see this guy who was not raised in their faith really being interested in their God? I mean, how might that help the Jews' faith?
It would let you know how big your God was. Again, I mean, you'll have known your stories of what he did in Nineveh, and here he is doing the same with the foreign people again.
Yeah. Huh. And I love the expression the angel uses with Cornelius. Your prayers and your alms have come up as a memorial before God. What might that tell us about God's activity in heaven as far as looking down at people's spiritual activity here on the earth, in particular, Cornelius?
I think it's, yeah.
I was just going to say, he's watching, he observes, and he can see our heart in how we give too. And he knows, and he appreciates it, and he remembers.
Yeah, because you make me think, Bev. I mean, Cornelius, being a Roman officer, he could have given alms just to kind of placate people, right? Like, okay, hey, I want to get them on our side, so I don't have to deal with a bunch of mess. But does that seem what has happened here based on God's response?
Yeah. I'd say not. For God to appreciate it, he would know that it was genuine, not just something on the surface.
Wow.
To please people. It was to please him.
A memorial, that's something that's been done to remember something that's already happened. So in a way, it's kind of, all those good things you're doing, that's a memorial to what I've already done in you. Perhaps.
Ooh, I like that. Yeah.
I think it's also what the angel doesn't say. Here's this guy, you don't get to be a centurion without seeing some battle.
Yeah.
You don't get this by working at the training camp or working in the back lines on supply. I'd say that this guy has seen some battle. Like most soldiers, he's probably done some things because of just how circumstances worked, where he wished he hadn't done that.
Mm,
A village, a village here where some women and children got killed that you didn't mean to, or,
yeah.
But God doesn't say, the blood on your hands has come up before me. It's God is choosing just the stuff that is pleasing to him.
Wow. Yeah. Well, man, I would love to camp out there a little bit, but I really want us to talk about, so that the angel says to him, okay, this has come up to God as a memorial. So because of that, send some men to Joppa and get Peter, and he's going to come and tell you what to do. Okay. Now, does this seem like a lot of wasted effort? Because I mean, the angel is giving a message. How much? I mean, here the angel is going to all this trouble saying, "You send men to Joppa," and Cornelius could have just said, "Yo, dude, instead of going to all that, why don't you just tell me what I need to know?" Right? So, what might that tell us about God's plan? That rather than the angel sharing this information with him, it was going to need to come from Peter.
He cares about relationships, and he was establishing relationships with others. Otherwise, he's on his own, but that gives him significant people to relate to and learn from and communicate with, develop, otherwise that connection doesn't get made. And God cared enough to make, to let the angel tell him to have the people go, which shows God's, how important it was. And that's, God can do anything. And that was how he chose to do that.
Wow. Yeah. Bev, and hearing you say that, it makes me think as well. I mean, if Cornelius had just popped into the church, if the angel had given the message and he's, oh yeah, I'm ready, I'm all on board. When he came into the church, there wouldn't be anybody there to verify, right, what had happened. I can only imagine how well that would have gone over. To have a centurion come walking in.
If there's somebody really important and they want me to do something, it's fine if they were to call and say, would you like to do such and such, Diane? But if I'm going to get the instructions, I just as soon it not come from the top guy, because that's just going to make me nervous the whole time.
Yeah.
So if you've got somebody you could send to tell me this stuff, I think it's quite enough that you pointed me to them, Mr. Scary Angel Man.
Yeah.
Because I'm not sure I can really concentrate as good with you right there.
Well, does this tell us anything about God's plan for the gospel, in that he went to all this trouble to send an angel, but was going to use Peter to share the actual gospel message? Might that tell us anything about God's intentions?
Well, I think he wanted maybe to share people with firsthand experience, to share people who had a story and skin on and scars,
Yeah.
Not people who were obviously, well, in this case, not a person, but an angel who was obviously, had authority on his own and foreknowledge and knew the inside scoop and had everything together,
Yeah. Yeah, that's good.
I think it's kind of weird that it's like, go get this guy, and he's staying with this other guy.
Yeah.
And he'll talk to you.
Yeah.
Like, really? That's all the context I get? Know who this guy is? Like, is he a leader of something? What's his deal?
Not a lot of detail.
I mean, that is so very bare bones.
Yeah, I hadn't
Um,
thought about that.
that Cornelius is the kind of guy that can go with it. Because I told you I don't want the angel to talk to me, but so long. But I would still be kind of grabbing at whatever you can grab at on an angel and say, no, tell me a little more before you leave. Is that really all I get? Cornelius, I think, is just that kind of guy that he's like, yeah, I can do that.
Yeah. Sam, what were you gonna?
It just, Cornelius is a soldier. He knows war. He's told to do something, he does it. And someone with the authority of an angel that scares him, tells him to do something. When someone talks to you and they scare you and tell you to do something, generally you do it.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah, that's the way I am with my wife.
yep.
Just, she says something, I'm yes, dear.
Yep.
You don't ask questions.
Yeah, after 40 years, I've learned. Okay? I have to sleep sometime. So that's, it's, in the story, we see that that God wanted to use Peter. He wanted to use a man to share the message and not some angel. Today, do we still see that being part of God's plan, that the communication of the gospel is to be through men and or women? I don't want to come across as being sexist. So,
Sure.
well, what
Yeah.
I mean, what does that look like today? I mean, what is our responsibility as far as God's messengers?
I think to testify to what he's done in our lives.
And to share his story as best we can. For everyone.
Well, and you say that, Sam, and I'm reminded of what the angel told him to do. Go and find Peter. He'll tell you what to do. Right? Which to me kind of sums up our responsibility as individuals. We're going to tell people what to do spiritually. It's not, although that phraseology might not go over real well in at least in the American culture at this point. But
I think Cornelius is this man of action.
hmm.
So that's gonna, he'll tell you what to do. Cornelius is gonna want something to do, I think.
Yeah.
He'll help change your perspective on things and perhaps cause a paradigm shift. I don't think that's really the way Cornelius would want to hear it.
Yeah. Well, I wonder, as we, as we look at God's plan and his expectation today for people, has there been a time, when you found yourself kind of being because I love, I love the second part of this story that we're obviously not doing. Peter just minding his own business and takes a nap at lunchtime, which goes to show you do not nap at lunch because you're going to have weird dreams. But I don't think Peter saw that coming. So for us, I mean, can you think of a time in your life when maybe God was using you in a way that you hadn't expected to be used?
You know what? It's funny. Diane used the word paradigm shift. And I think that Peter got the bigger paradigm shift here. Because Cornelius was already devout. He was already doing as, we had pointed out, and now he's gonna learn something else to do, and understand, that is actually just a state of belief, and response in obedience. And Peter's really going to lead the way in showing him what that obedience looks like. obedience to some things that seem a little crazy, seem a little wild. They're not anything, right? Did we go that far? Arise, Peter, kill and eat.
We haven't gone quite there yet.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's going to be a fun story next week. And I'm not sure if either Dan or I or Diane are going to do that story, because that's the next one that's up. So it's just a kind of a fun story. But I wonder, for us as individuals, if we can think of how we, or maybe somebody we know, has been used in unexpected ways as a messenger for the Lord, or representative for the Lord, or fill in the blank.
I think of a wee guy I met recently. He's a good friend of one of my best friends. My good friend, my best friend would be from a Catholic background. This wee guy was from a Protestant background. He would have competed in business with my friend's father, and would have been in the British military in Ireland from the Protestant tradition. So you wouldn't think God would put him into my friend's life, but he did, and has ended up being a big spiritual influence on a number of levels with my friend. And quite fascinating wee man. Very different, kind of same military background. They seem to be the ones that happens with. Another friend, the same thing. And he was in the British military, but he was also in a terrorist group as well. Same thing, God saved him, and God put him now working with the people he would have been fighting against. So.
Wow. Yeah.
Tim, are you saying the guy is short?
Yes. I had to mentally think wee guy, just turn of phrase, but both of them are quite short, incidentally, or well, not massive, not massive.
Yeah, I am the midget in my family, and I was only 6'3", and so I looked up to everybody in my family, and now especially my son, who is almost 2 meters tall. So
I have a friend. He's with the Lord in December. Wee Willie, he was 6'8", and all around terrifying if you didn't know him.
Yeah.
And apparently before he knew the Lord, literally all around terrifying.
There were reasons.
There were reasons.
Well, thank you guys. And thank you for sharing that, Sam. That's a great example of how God would use the unexpected to accomplish his purpose. This story is in Acts chapter 10, verses 1. We made it through verses 6 or 7, somewhere along there. I'm not real sure which. So and I'm going to stop the recording now.